Welcome to your instant match reaction for Sunderland 1, Everton 1. It's me, Warren, and I'm joined by Dave and by Rob Vera. And I'll come to you first, Dave, on this. Just as it is, it's a 1-1 draw, and I think we played brilliant for the first half hour. Probably looked as good as we have all season for the first half hour, but just could not capitalise. And then we've let them back in the game, and probably seen why they've done so well this season, because I thought they played quite well second half. But it's becoming a bit of a concern, isn't it, that we can't put teams away? And also for me as well, Dave, simply cannot do it for 90 minutes. It's in fits and spurts. It's not good enough, is it?
Before we started doing the instant reaction, I said you need to host this, and the reason being is I don't care what score it was in that game. I don't care that we got 1-1 draw at Sunderland. I am absolutely seething with that from firstly the manager, who I've supported and backed to the hilt, so much so that I've been getting so much criticism for saying he's taken us in the right direction. He's done brilliant since he came back in. That was an absolute fucking disgrace today. And honestly, if I had any hair left, I'd pull it, because the way in which that side that he selects, first of all, you look at it and he's just not simply learning from the mistakes we've made. Well, we won that 1-8, something like that. But you look at what happened against Spurs. You look what happened in the shit draws we had against West Ham. The man's not for changing. We know that. That's what we're used to. We're used to it with most Everton managers that come in. But for things that are so blatantly fucking obvious to all of us, it's almost like he's baiting us to kick off. He wants people to come to be drawn in towards him, to scream to the high heavens, where he just doesn't listen because he doesn't have to. He can have that ignorance as a human being, as a football manager. Today, and there's so many different pieces of this, and Rob was much more sensible than me just before we started there in his assessments of things. But I mean, there are so many things to pick apart about this here. Maybe we should have done it in a different direction here, because I think Moyes is the main thing. That's the umbrella of all the shit show we saw today. The umbrella is David Moyes in this. And drawing 1-1, I didn't care really. Maybe I would have been more asked if we got beat, obviously, but I don't care that it was 1-1. It was much more important to me what I saw and winced all night with, looking at that, thinking, have we not got beat? Deserve to lose the game. We deserve to lose the game based on his tactics, what he did, and how most of those on the pitch played that he didn't bring off. So in a funny way, I can't blame any of the players for playing shite, because they shouldn't have been on the pitch to play shite. It's infuriating that we've just seen that in a season that we're meant to be kicking on, in a season that we're meant to be looking at, oh, maybe can we get into Europe? Give me 17th place right now, and I'll go and enjoy the summer. Absolute embarrassment of an effort.
I think, Rob, when I saw the starting 11, I was surprised that there wasn't more changes. I was surprised that after what we saw against Spurs with the slow build-up, and Les has mentioned it a couple of times with you, Dave, on Blue Monday as well, about the fact that there doesn't seem to be trust in utilising the squad, and there doesn't seem to be faith in the squad and players. These are players, by the way, who he signed in the summer, and I do have a concern. I'm maybe not quite along the same lines as Dave there, Rob, but I do have a concern with Moyes at the moment, because he doesn't appear to adapt. And I think the starting 11 summed that up, but I think as the game wore on, you saw Sunderland adapt. You saw Sunderland realise what they were up against, particularly in that first half an hour. And their manager made a difference and made changes and adapted to the game as it was happening. Everton didn't respond to that. And I think that it is becoming an issue, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I pointed out, I think I'd said probably on Twitter, but something along the lines of, Moyes seemed oddly more comfortable with the squad that he inherited from Deitch than the one that he has actually had input on building for this year, which, to be fair, still includes a lot of holdovers, as seemingly the endless cycle of Everton manager changes, of course, results in a lot of misalignment, I think is the generous way of putting it, in terms of, knowing who to trust, knowing what kind of what kind of like formation and tactics you can employ with a bunch of players who are brought together for mixed purposes and whatever. Like, I sympathize with all those things, but Moyes is a manager who I have a personal fondness for and I want to see succeed, but he has got to wake up. Like, wake the, can we cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, do it. Go on.
He needs to wake the fuck up, because and look, this is where I think Mick Greenall and I have both, and Mick and I have disagreed philosophically about a lot of things in terms of football, I think. But Mick is like one of the smartest people I know when it comes to the way he looks at the game and he analyzes the game. And he and I are both, the one thing though that we really agree on, and that I don't understand why more people have not gotten real about this, because I wonder if Moyes is the only one who looked at this squad and said, yeah, Europe is the expectation, or if other fans looked at the end of last season and the lesson they took from it when Moyes came in and improved the side was that, oh yeah, Europe this season. Like, I think the majority, like Mick and I are on the same page about this, and I feel like we're in a minority, but surely we shouldn't be. But Everton are not a side that is ready from a depth standpoint, or from the fact that, I don't know, they don't have fullbacks, like they don't have a proven striker. Like, there's a million reasons why the Europe should not have been the expectation. I don't know if bringing in Jack Grealish has made people glaze over that fact, but I think Moyes operates under this assumption that I have to get to Europe, and therefore I'm going to lean on, play all the quote experienced guys. Don't change the line, don't change things too much. Just let them figure it out, which, I sympathize with the idea of consistency, but consistency only has value if there is productivity attached to it at a certain point, right? And him remaining consistent despite the clear downturn of the trajectory of this side since the start of the season. You're right. Like you said at the very beginning, Warren, like you were surprised not to see changes. I don't know that I was surprised anymore, because Moyes seems to really be kind of digging in. And and I've gone into this period kind of thinking, look, if we're going to be kind of mediocre, then we might as well be mediocre with a purpose and build and develop and learn something about these young players that we spent all this money on, so that we can hopefully build them towards being ready with another couple of windows to challenge for Europe next season. But what am I watching? Like, what is this? It's such a mishmash of, like, he's playing this side and does not seem to want to consider changes to it, as if it has earned the right to not be changed. And then he acts so risk averse about playing young players, as if Europe is on the line right now. And and Dave, you may be alluding to this, I'll take 17th place right now. If you're concerned that we're going into, that we're in a genuine relegation fight, I'm not sure I'm there yet. But what I will say is that if we're going to be bad, we might be, below average. We might as well be below average while learning something about more players. So to your point, Warren, like, I don't understand why there haven't been changes. Like, but I think that all speaks to the fact that David Moyes sees this, his, I don't know if it's his mandate or his goal or his view of this thing as Europe, whereas I don't think that's actually realistic. I suspected that going into today, but once that Dwight McNeil substitution happened today, I feel like it was confirmed that he has no desire to play these players in any meaningful way, or put any effort towards developing them, if he's going to put Dwight McNeil on in a situation like that today. That was a weird one. I mean, not that I was for Dwight McNeil getting more game time per se, but I did want to see something different. I didn't just want to see the same old. And, we've talked on a couple of shows here about how the fact Everton are predictable. And I think just for me as well, I really struggle when players who are underperforming and are still getting game time. And
he's not hooking the players who deserve to be hooked. I mean, sorry to go back to the Wolves Cup game, but there was a number of players who underperformed massively in that first half, and he made the changes because he wasn't happy. Well, there's now players in that team who are getting starts every week who for me are not performing, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show. But what I do want to focus on the positive a little bit, because that first goal, Dave, by Iliman and Jai, I can't see how there won't be many suitors for him come maybe January, or if not the summer, because he is one player of supreme quality that we've got. And for him to win the ball where he did and get the ball from a deep line position and then really attack that Sunderland back line, and then to curl one in on his weaker foot as well. It was an absolutely stunning goal, one that got me off my seat and one that got me excited to see more. And it was really brilliant, wasn't it? And I think Iliman and Jai at the moment is the spark, is the difference maker for us. And it was just a superb goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the shine's been taken off it, hasn't it? But yeah, if we're talking for a brief moment about the one bit of shine that was in that game that was woeful to put too fine a point on, it was that goal. And I think it emphasises how much better he is than everybody else we've got around, including Jack Grealish. Not that there's anything to blame on him for today, because he barely got the ball played to him. And there was all sorts going on at that side that probably pales into insignificance given all the other crap that's gone on elsewhere. But with that goal, yeah, I mean, he gets it, he drives, and he just looks like just a bundle of fun watching him as a player, and that he's really enjoying playing like a kid when you first start kicking a ball when you're so young. Doesn't have a care in the world. He does it so it looks so seamless, the way in which he does it. The way he just drove into their players, basically just waiting for someone to jump at him, make them look like an absolute idiot, because he does it game on game. He likes to be fouled. He likes physical battles because he's so strong for the little fella. And then, yeah, I mean, what he does there, he just keeps on running and running and running, and then just puts in a fantastic finish there, which I don't even think their goalkeeper expected even 10 minutes after it went in. And it's a fantastic finish. And it's that, you think, it's set you on the way there. And look, I got ripped apart on Twitter for saying that Barry should have been taken off because I was that infuriated by that miss, which, what might well, in hindsight, might well have proved to have been that was the game in his hands from 3 yards out or whatever it was, because we go 2-0 up, and then that might well have been it, and then you're looking at Moyes making the subs and he doesn't look like such a fucking idiot that we're talking about right now. But yeah, and Dai there, he's just a cut above everybody else. And I don't know what you lads feel about this, and maybe it's a very old-fashioned way of thinking, but I used to look at players like that thinking, and I start thinking there's a clock on them for how long Everton keep him, for how long he's going to be an Everton player. And I look at Dai, and he's that exact feeling I get. I think how long have we got him for? Because I guess he's probably odds on to not be an Everton player this time next year. Certainly staying on the trajectory he's on now, because he is miles ahead of everything else we've got. And when he sees that, he gets taken off because he's injured, and then he gets taken off, and who comes on but Dwight McNeil? And so if you've put all your efforts in on a match there to do what he did, electrifying when he gets the ball, and you've worked so hard to do that. And if you're in a top quality team, you're thinking, do you know what? That's earned my team a win. That means everybody around me can play to the level I can. And then he sees that. He sees who he's gone off for. He's probably desperate to stay on the pitch, wasn't he? You've seen him walking off. You've seen him got a load of treatment from the physio. He's wanted to stay on the pitch. And then he comes off and he sees Dwight McNeil, whose head's in the clouds, walking on, who had Bradford run rings around him a couple of weeks ago in an under-23 game. I'm sorry to keep on going back to David Moyes, but I think that's the main take from all of this is what we got from the manager there. But yeah, that goal in itself was absolutely stunning, and he deserves much more than what we're sitting here talking about, and that's because everything else in and around him and after that was a shit show. But that star man, and I just think I pay to watch him on his own.
Yeah, it really was an exceptional goal. And for all the criticism that the team rightly and David Moyes rightly will get, in our opinions and in my opinion certainly, it was an absolutely brilliant first half hour, Rob. I mean, if you remember back to the very start of the game with the kickoff, I mean, James Garner almost scores after 10 seconds. We looked very much on the front foot. We looked very much like we wanted to take the game by the scruff of the neck and really dictate things. And I'd not seen an Everton team for a long time really dominate possession like we did in that first half hour and make Sunderland look like the promoted team that they are. But unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, we just can't do it for the 90 minutes. And I think the conversation, we were talking a little bit about it there before we started recording. I think the conversation has to turn. You know, we've mentioned a lot about the attacking players there, and you know, and we will. And I know a lot of the discussion, a lot of the discourse will be on the strikers, but that's 7 games in a row now, Rob, where we've conceded. And off air just before we started recording, you were saying about how displeased you were and your displeasure at the defending for the first goal. Much has been made about the deflection by Tarkowski and how probably deep he is inside the area now. He's not probably performing in his best, and I think he has had a poor season to begin with. But there was a lot of mistakes leading up to that, and we just didn't defend it well at all, did we?
No, I mean, there were kind of just these 2 big moments, and you know, there was, to your point, a great starting 25, 30 minutes to the game where the best case scenario idea of what this preferred kind of Moyes 11, generally speaking, looks like, right? But it's precisely your point. We can't make that. We for whatever reason we can't. Maybe it's probably, you know, it's a lack of talent. Maybe we don't have enough, you know, enough in midfield, or, you know, not having fullbacks who can support the attack. Like, we are going to be kind of a lean scoring team. So, you know, maybe that 30 minutes is what you need to capitalize on. And of course, the Barry miss is huge in that equation, because, you know, if we're up 2-0, that changes a lot. But the bottom line is that we don't score a lot. And so since we don't, we have to be of that kind of mindset of, hey, we're going to be operating under some relatively thin margins here. So we have got to be on. We cannot switch off. And so that's why it's so disheartening to come out of the second half. And what was it, 30, 45 seconds into the second half that they scored?
Yeah.
I mean, it was
straight away.
And if you go back, and I don't know how many people have watched it, I've gone back and watched that goal now before we started recording, probably 5-6 times. And you will be blown away at what a slow motion car crash it is on so many levels. Like, you know, on the one hand, you've got people doing the right thing in terms of like for instance, the ball gets played out, you know, close to the, you know, not quite to the corner, but to that kind of to the boundary there. And, you know, Keane as the center half goes out there to meet that guy, as he should. But then it's like the right decision with the wrong amount of urgency or speed. At some point, kind of Keane starts making his way back into the box, and then the ball gets recycled back out to it was a Xhaka, and then it was Lafay, I think is who it was, who got the assist for the goal. But it was this wild sequence where basically everyone, you know, kind of did the right, you know, was thinking they were doing the right thing, but, you know, made the wrong decision and or did it at the wrong speed at the absolute worst time. So then, you know, at some point, Lafay just walks right back into the box. Like, Keane sort of escorts him in there. And I don't know if he's supposed to, because you've got, you know, Jake O'Brien right behind him who gets the deflection, but then that deflection comes right back out and recycled to Lafay again. And then, you know, I think, Dave, you were talking about like, you know, Dewsbury Hall kind of makes this half-hearted. I don't know if it was half-hearted or it just wasn't enough, right, of a dive to try to block the ball or block the shot. And then you have Keane, who swerves out of the way of the ball, which maybe he's supposed to do, Dave, to your point, because if it's going straight at the keeper, or you think it's going straight at the keeper, maybe you're trying to make that room. But the bottom line is that he does that. Tarkowski does the opposite thing. Like, if you want to stick your foot out, both of you have to commit to blocking the shot. Or if you're going to allow them, you know, both of you kind of allow that ball to get to the keeper. But what you don't do is do 2 different things. And it's just they turn off at the worst possible time. And so therefore, you know, and we're going to talk about the Barry thing. The Barry miss is huge, but the Barry miss happens in the first half. We end the first half with a lead, and it does not excuse everything else that happened after that. Our inability to, you know, to put anything else together after that kind of first period of the game was really inexcusable. The breakaway at the end, where I love Charlie Alcaraz, man, I want him to play more, but he kind of, I've never seen a guy think he had more time in the world to just kind of set up in the box for a perfect shot. And we just blew this amazing chance to grab the 3 points. It was just a calamity, and we, you know, of bad mental errors. And again, it just speaks to the idea of, you know, if this is the best that this group can do, then you might as well make changes, because we need to figure out what's going to make sense for the future instead of whatever we're meant to be doing this season.
Yeah, that chance at the end, I mean, that for me sums up our attacking intent at the moment. You know, I'm not making excuses for Charlie Alcaraz at all, but I think if he plays most of the game there, he's probably a bit sharper to that. He doesn't look match fit, and I don't mean physically fit. He doesn't. Some of the players who aren't playing, they don't look match fit because they're not getting enough game time, and this is becoming a big issue about the game time. And there's a lot of chat. I'm looking online as you were talking there, Rob. There's a lot of chat about how we're not giving players game time, and we're not, you know, playing the signings that we've brought in, and what was the point in the recruitment we made, and if we were signing them for, you know, for now, why aren't they playing now, and all this type of chat what's going on. But the one area that is going to rumble on, it's going to rumble on and on until we do address it, is the striking situation. I don't think David's healthy to keep chopping and changing these two. I think you've got to decide on one and play them regardless of the performance. I think the look on Tieno Barry's face when he got substituted said it all for me. I think that's a lad who's, I mean, I think both of those confidence is shot, Beto and Tieno Barry. I might be in the minority here. I thought Tieno Barry, miss aside, did okay. I'm not saying he was brilliant. I'm not saying he was outstanding. I'm not saying he was looking every bit of the striker we hoped we'd have when we signed him. But I thought he did okay. He competed for aerial duels. He looked a lot better in the air than Beto has ever has. I thought he did at some points his hold-up play was decent, and he brought players into the game. I just really feel for that lad at the minute. I think coming to a new country, coming from a Spanish league into our league where it's notoriously different, it's faster paced, it's more physical. I think he's going to need some time, but I just feel like I'm getting a bit fed up now with the chopping and changing each week. I've no doubt come at the Fulham game next weekend, Beto will start, and then he'll bring Beto off after 60, 70 minutes, and then he'll probably do something different the week after. I think you've got to do now, for me, one or two things. You've got to pick one of them and start them and play them every game regardless. Or the way they're both performing at the minute and how poor they both look, it is starting. The false nine doesn't seem like such a bad idea, bringing someone into that position. Firstly, what do you think, Dave, of the decision to bring Barry off and the idea of the chopping and changing of them? And going forward, do we need to look at an alternative, be that the false nine or be it something completely different? Or third option, do we wait till January and really address this issue and bring in a ready-made striker who'll do something for us here and now?
Well, starting with Barry there. I mean, I said to you before, I got ripped apart for saying that I'd sack him right now, and I don't think he's ever played for us again, missing that opportunity. But in hindsight and looking at it, I was completely wrong in saying that, because it probably was his best performance for us. I think it identified and shed a lot of light on how difficult it is for those lads to play. I know they've been poor. I know they've missed the opportunities they get. I know they've missed sitters, both of them, from a couple of yards out. But
they have, and we're being fair, and we're saying that they have been very poor.
That's the main thing. You know, strikers live and die by that. You know, we all agree with that. But when you get to a point where you think, well, what else has he got to work with around him? How has Moyes set this up here? Are these lads just put in there as big lumps to win headers and flick it on and chase it themselves, much the same way Calvert-Lewin did for the most of his career at Everton? That's where I do have a level of sympathy for them. And you take away that chance Barry had, then it probably was his best performance. Well, it was his best performance for us there. It was his third start. So, if we're taking into context what footballers as human beings are, you're starting any job and you only get 3 particular occasions to try and do what you've been taught to do. It's just not going to work, is it? It's going to take a lot longer for you to settle in and be able to do so. Is sort of his character as he came off the pitch and shaking his head, completely understand that, because he got 10 minutes in the second half. So again, going back to Moyes, what's he spoke to him on at half time, thinking you've got 10 minutes to prove to me that you're better than what we've seen in the first half? That is it some sort of punishment for missing that chance and saying I'll give you 10 minutes to try and do it again? He goes off 10 minutes in. So what's he done in that 10 minutes for Moyes to stand there and think, do you know what? He's got to get off and put better on. So has he performed that badly in that 10 minutes? Don't recall him even have much of a touch of the ball like the rest of the side, because Sunderland were in the was starting to attack a lot more than us and had a lot more of the ball than us. So it wasn't really down to him that he didn't have much of the ball. And then his manager's going to make that decision, put better on. And the lad, youngster, trying to learn his trade. Yes, we paid a lot of money, so he should be doing better than what we've seen. He comes off the pitch and he's probably he's sitting at the end of the game, still shaking his head. And then Beto comes on. I can't recall him having a much touch of a ball there. In fact, the ironic thing where we might well have scored, or we probably should have scored, or at least had a shot, was that break. It reminded me of when we scored away at Crystal Palace last season, when Alcaraz was bursting forward and he had Beto to his side. He laid him in and there was a goal. So obviously that never went on to happen. But I mean, the overall thing with it all is that the third option you mentioned there, I think, is what I go to here. And two of them need to be. Look, there are 2 things you could do there as a third option, if that makes sense. You can start them both and just completely think, you know what, I'll give this a go. I'll try something else, which you've got probably the worst manager in world football that would ever try something to experiment with it, because he's never done that in his life, Moyes. Certainly to my knowledge at Everton, he's never done that in his life, maybe except for the last couple of minutes of a game where you desperately need to go. You can either do that, which he won't, and he won't do the other one as well, which is put the pair of them on the bench and have somebody else there. I don't care who it is. Just try somebody. And people have make that joke all the time about Michael Keane. I'd rather see Michael Keane there than those 2. And that sounds like a massive slight on them. And perhaps it is, but also it's something different that we haven't seen. Just do something else. You've got a squad to work with there. And yet, if you look at that list of changes that he's made there, and these are players that he signed that he hasn't used. So what's happening there? You look at the McNeil one sticks out like a sore thumb, doesn't it? Coming on for Ndiaye, that's going to happen anyway for who he's coming on for, whether he's injured or not. And Ndiaye on one leg could have been better and fitter than McNeil when he came on there, because he was breathing like me, running to get a cone from the cone full of ice cream that stops by ours outside in the van. And breathing like
me. He's got a mental picture of Dave running after an ice cream truck.
Honestly, like me running after an ice cream man, mate, he's blowing absolute chunks. But he eventually...
Do you know what? There's a picture doing the rounds. I've just seen him, just looking at it now. Now it's a still of the breakaway in the last minute where Grealish has fed Alcaraz, and then I think it's Thierry Mabunum with him. So it's the 2-on-1. And there's a circle around Beto who's just about in picture, and he's jogging outside the penalty. Now, I have to put this into context and say he's just headed a corner to allow us to have that breakaway. So that's why he's so deep. However, it just for me sums up where we are with these attackers and where we are as a team, as an attacking threat. Because I think, Rob, that for all the talk about the strikers, and, I'd love your opinion on it, what you do with what we've got here and now until we possibly can address it in January. Do we start one, chop and change them like we're doing, or whatever? But I think what it says to me is that you need essentially to have something, a focal point up top. Now, whether that be what Dave said there, someone who you lump the ball up to and they win it in the air, which now and again Calvert-Lewin would do for us and have a great game, maybe one in every 6 games, Calvert-Lewin would do that and look outstanding. Or you have someone who will hold the ball up and bring others into play and be a real top centre forward in that sense. And the importance of that to a team is just, you can see. I mean, you see what City have got with Haaland, and look, I know we've got nothing near the likes of Haaland, and we probably never will have. But having someone of that quality just gives breathing space to everyone else in the team. We currently haven't got that. And then when the likes of your creativity and your spark and your goals have to go on the likes of Grealish and Jai, I do feel it's a lot of pressure for them. I think Njai stepped up, obviously, and I've seen a few little things about Jack Grealish tonight not playing as well, and I don't think he did play as well as, and I didn't think he played brilliant against Spurs either, but I can definitely feel the weight of the world probably on his shoulders because he's having to do everything that you'd want our strikers to do, and they're just not doing. What do you do, Rob, if you're the manager there? Do you pick one and stick with it? And how do Everton address this? It's got to be in January, hasn't it?
Yeah, but let me go back to what you said previously, Warren, which is I just endorse your thoughts that you had earlier when you said that, you know, it doesn't do either of these strikers any good to be chopped and changed this much, because what is it you lose when, like, what is it that a striker loses when he sits for a long period of time? He loses that sharpness in front of net, you know, Calvert-Lewin would play, God knows what, 30 something straight game, you know, when he wasn't injured, you know, when he started getting his fitness back, he would play games and games and games, and he would still miss all those chances. But to me, that's different than a player who is just, you know, both of these guys, they're just, that's been the story. Beto's had like 90% of these chances, but they've missed, you know, these chances. Part of it's being chopped and changed, but with Beto, at least I know a little more because we've got a bigger body of work to look at. We know kind of what Beto is and what he's not, right? And I think, you know, to your point about, well, we can address it in January. I mean, how many times have we said that over the last, since Lukaku left, basically? Like, it is difficult for clubs where we're at right now to acquire by pushing a button. Even clubs with great finances sometimes spend big money on guys like, you know, that like, I don't know that Arsenal is totally loving the money they spent on Gyökeres or whatever, that guy, however you pronounce that guy's name, you know, at this point either. You know, it's not as easy as it looks, right? And so, and I think we all know that. So we have to kind of like we bought this guy from Spain who'd scored double-digit goals in La Liga, and I think we thought, hey, he's going to take some time to develop. And if that was, but we can see him becoming all the things, Warren, that you just ticked off of a top-class striker who can like be a focal point, do all those things. Well, the only way he's going to do that is if he plays. And I don't really understand what happened with, and he may have even been like 8 minutes into the second half when he came off. And I don't remember a single thing he could have done to warrant getting taken off at that point. Like, if you were concerned about the yellow card, just take him off at halftime. But the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, he missed a chance that was huge. And you can think two things are true at once. Barry missing that chance, he needed to score that today. We needed that goal and we paid for it, right? On the other hand, if you're trying to look at the big picture with someone like this, or with any striker or any player that you bring in, if you let them die on the vine, you can't be shocked when you suddenly need them. You bring them in, they're not sharp, and you basically punish them, or you decide, hey, you got your one chance, and now we're not going to play you anymore. Like, what does that do to his confidence? How does that serve the purpose of developing him? And how does that align with the idea that you had in the summer when you bought a player that you knew you'd need to invest time in? Right? Like, like the only way out is through. They need to pick a lane and go with that guy. And if they say it's Beto, by the way, Warren, then start Beto and define a 30-minute, 20-minute type role for Barry, but give these guys some kind of like, you know, expectation and allow them to develop in those roles, because whatever you're doing right now is not working, right? And it's not serving either the short term of just like wanting to win and get points, and it's not even serving the long term of developing these guys that we're gonna need, because we can't keep throwing money at strikers when we clearly have even bigger holes. But like, as much as the striker thing hurts everyone right now, not having fullbacks is absurd. That's part of the reason we don't score as much. That's why our defense is inconsistent. Like, there are other things, and midfield still needs work. There are other things that we have to address. So like, let's pay, if we're going to pay money for strikers, let's try and develop them before we just move on to trying to throw money at the problem once again.
I think naturally the reaction tonight from everyone is going to be one of a fairly negative one, because we didn't play well. I've just seen David Moyes, Everton have put out a tweet here just with David Moyes' interview to the club, and he's just reading what the tweet says. He says, we've got to find a way of playing well for much longer periods than we're doing at the moment. And I don't think we've had one game this year where we've played well for the whole of the game. Even though, think back to the victories we've had, the Wolves victory, we really struggled the last 20 minutes. And there's been, other victories and other games where we've won where we've not played particularly well. And again tonight, we've talked about it, about the first half an hour being brilliant, but you've got to maintain that. And at this standard, at this level, you have to do it for the full period. But I think Dave, it is one of negativity, the feeling tonight. It is one of, we should be doing better, and rightly so. I think that the performance tonight wasn't good enough. But for me, there's the issue why that's happening. I think Rob made a good point there when he said about the fullbacks. We've talked practically every show, and we probably will keep talking about it on every show until it gets addressed. We talked about the fullbacks. We've mentioned the strikers there. For me, there's an unbalance in the team. There's not a correct way of playing it, and I think it's affecting players' performances. I have been a huge critic in the last couple of games of Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. I don't think he's played well at all. Now, does that mean that I think he's a bad player? No. Does that mean that I think we shouldn't have signed him? No, because I think in games he has displayed levels of good ability, and you can see why the likes of Chelsea wanted him in the past. But he's not a number 10 in my book. I'm sorry, but he's not. He's not quick enough. He doesn't break the lines enough. He doesn't get into areas. Remember the way when we had Tim Cahill, and Cahill would get into little pockets and little areas where he'd be threatening? Dewsbury-Hall doesn't do that for me. He's neat, he's tidy, he's accomplished on the ball. He needs to be playing deeper. But we're not playing to anybody's strengths, and I think part of that is because of the recruitment and not getting in the players that we need now, in terms of, for instance, full-backs. And the other part of it is we're not playing players to the strengths. We're lumping it up to Beto. We've talked about not being good aerially. Beto had that purple patch last year where he scored a lot of goals where the ball was played to him quickly. I think of James Garner's ball to him against Leicester last season. I think of the goal against Liverpool he scored where the ball was played quickly for him to run onto. I don't think I've seen a pass played in front of Beto once this season. I've mentioned Dewsbury-Hall there. Look, I think James Garner's had a very good season, but I just think he feels like he's this ball-playing centre midfielder, and I don't see it. I'd like to see him as part of maybe a 3 with Dewsbury-Hall dropping deeper. The point I'm trying to make, for me, Dave, I think this side at the moment is not looking like it can and not looking like it should, because it's not balanced. Players are playing out of position. Players aren't performing well, and we're not playing to players' strengths. A lot of that is going to be on the manager, and rightly so, and he needs to find a way to address that, which, to his credit, he did when he came in last season. He got us playing and he worked to play his strengths. But we've got Fulham on Saturday, and this all of a sudden turns into quite a worrying game, because if we don't get the victory against a team who have had their struggles this season, I think you're starting to look for people who are saying Everton will be comfortable mid-table, or Everton will be fine, to once again, and I'm not advocating and saying we're going to get relegated, but people are going to start looking over the shoulders, aren't they? So we've got to find a way, and we've got to do it quick, and it's got to come from the manager quickly as well, hasn't it?
Well, we and Moyes himself hasn't taken advantage of how condensed that league table is, because had we won or got a point elsewhere, wherever you can, miraculously get 4 points onto what we've got there, you're actually in a battle for the European position, given the way the table has been here. So it can look like you're in a false place here. Everton right now probably where they should be in the league. Many would say lower than that, down with what Wolves are doing and sort of, scraping the bottom of the barrel to try and stay in the league. Everton aren't going to get relegated. It takes a lot for me to say that after the years we've had, but Everton aren't going to get relegated. So therefore, you pass that question on and that discussion on and that debate on to what is a good season for Everton. You mentioned, I'm trying to go through everything you've assessed there. The recruitment has been an issue that we've spoken about since the end of the window, with fullbacks, with the striker. It's the latter that's come to fruition, isn't it? As we seem to speak about every single game. Scored I think there's only two sides that have scored. I think it's only Wolves and was it West Ham? It's Wolves or someone else in the bottom three. They're the only sides that have scored less goals than us this season.
Dave,
so
can
far.
I add one other number to that as well for context? In addition to that, I think coming into tonight, I don't know where we are right now, but coming into tonight, we were 15th in chance creation in the league as well. I mean, we're not, it's, because the strikers are a problem, but also, outside of Grealish, we're just not creating much.
Which wasn't an issue last year when he first come back. We were creating chances and he got us out of that dice mode where we just weren't doing anything.
Well,
so it feels kind of, Sorry, I was just going to finish off by saying it feels strange with arguably a better side now than last year that we're not creating as much, especially in that game tonight.
But this is where you need to part ways on what your assessment is on all of this, because then you start looking at it and thinking, is it either the players or the manager? Now, if you look at this without Everton doing, if you had no idea how Everton have done to this point of the season and you looked at Everton's squad, would you look at that and think that they should be creating whatever, we 15th in the league on chances created? Would you look at that squad that we had the start of the season, first game away at Leeds, and think that Everton are going to be 15th in the league with that squad on the amount of chances created? The answer is no. Everton should be a lot higher than that. Look, and we were all quite, excited about the new campaign, signing players in. We've got Jack Grealish, so, we've gone and got Dewsbury Hall, spending 30-odd million on players that don't seem like it's money going out of fashion once again, like it was when Koeman first came in. It looked like we made some intelligent signings. I'm not willing to throw that away, because I do think we have a lot of quality in there. So therefore, that makes me put my tuppence towards the manager and not getting the best from what we have there. Okay, so Dewsbury Hall there, I agree with you. I think he's been poor. I thought he was horrendous tonight. Might well be it looks like in the shape of the team and that imbalance that you're talking about. Looks like he was put in that position as 10 behind Barry at the start. And he's not that player. He's not that good enough to be that player, yet he was the one that's being given that to put in there. When you've got Alcaraz on the bench, which Moyes doesn't seem to like whatsoever, comes on and gets 7 minutes at the end of the game, take away the chance that was there, notwithstanding. So why are you not putting the player that is more suitable for that role in there? If you're not going to do that, then surely you have the presence of mind to think, well, I've seen that player, I've coached that player, I've done every bit of work with that player in Dewsbury Hall to play in that position. Quite clearly hasn't, or he's completely deluded and off his fucking mind if he thinks that he has, because we've seen zero evidence of that today. So where is there any sort of wherewithal of a manager there who was great for us for a decade and consistently got us into a European place, made us the best of the rest, got us into fourth place once? They sadly, in my time as an Evertonian, my life on this planet, probably the peak of where Everton have been was under David Moyes. Now, since then, he's gone to various clubs and, let's be honest, generally been a failure. I think West Ham, when he won that trophy, that was the season that was against everything else where he's pretty much done. He got Sunderland relegated. And so we're in a position now where he's in his 60s. And look, I got on with the fella for a long time, whenever I had to do any sort of work with him. But I don't get why things haven't changed. How can you spend that long in that job and not learn to do something else? Or at the very least think...
Or do something different.
I'll go against what my natural thought is. I'll do something different. The man doesn't do that. The man hasn't done that, and the man won't ever do that because nobody's going to change him at this age, are they? Yet he's coming out. And the comment he made there that I put on my Twitter about there was nothing worthy of talking about or positive in the second half. Well, why is that? Yeah, players individually we've spoken about all had shit performances. I agree, half a dozen of them being crap. That's fine. What are you going to do about it then? You're going to take off the striking. You've probably said at half time, go on, you should have scored that goal, but go and prove it wrong and give him 10
5
minutes.
minutes. Yeah,
exactly. You go and do that with them. The sub you make on there, who should have been playing as a 10, you don't make until the 83rd minute. You take it right back off for a midfielder in a Boonham, which I just think it's a pointless.
Who looked all right again when he come on. Actually, I thought. I know he didn't have long, but he looked all right.
Garner's fine at right back. I don't mind.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big point in itself, Rob. That's a spot on point in itself there because you've got O'Brien's not a right back. I think that experiment is long gone now. It should be Garner at right back there.
Can I say something, Dave? When you're making the point about Moyes not, I do think Moyes at times will come up with an idea, like when he gets somewhere or gets into a situation, he'll come up with an idea. It's that he doesn't know when to pivot to something new or come up, I think that creativity or willingness to think outside of the box just feels very kind of limited with him at times because I've seen Moyes, when Moyes came in and said, I'm taking Jake O'Brien. He's a really good defender, and we need him out there. And he's going to play right back, and it's going to be weird, but it's going to be what the moment needed, and it was. But to Dave, to your point, just because it made sense then, just like when Moyes came back, he helped us perform because I still think he's a very good manager who's not having a good moment right now, and I still think it's an open question that whether or not Moyes is the man for the Everton that we ostensibly want in the next few seasons versus the manager we needed to get us out of the Dyche mess, right? I don't know the answer to that question, but what I can say is that it's his inability or unwillingness to adapt a little bit, when the time calls for it, or to be sometimes even. It's weird because I'm sitting here complaining about Moyes looking at this squad and not being realistic about the situation. And if Moyes has been anything, at least the brand of David Moyes over time is that he's a realist, he's a pragmatist, and that he gets what he's got and he finds ways to get something out of it. But the game has changed to where clubs now, even clubs that were in the kind of the similar tier of financial whatever that we were in the mid 2000s or whatever when Moyes was in his heyday, like that stuff has changed and clubs are finding ways to play differently, think differently, take a chance on, having a longer term plan. I just don't know what the plan is. Like Moyes seems to think the plan is I got to get to this now. And I think that lack of alignment is frustrating him and it's making him dig in his heels. So Dave, to your point, it's just a lack of responsiveness and right now that just seems to make no sense. And I don't know how he can look at how this squad is playing and not consider some genuine changes to who's playing and at least give them chances to
contrast that, Rob, you look at the Sunderland manager tonight, Labrie, I think that's how you say his name. He adapted very quickly when he saw that Everton were on top, and his Sunderland side then, for the next hour of that game after the first half an hour, bossed it, dominated. Probably wouldn't have been. Probably, if you're a Sunderland fan, you probably go, points may be a fair result, but we should have won, or we could have won that game.
They absolutely should feel like they should have won. And by the way, we haven't said it on here. As much as this this is frustrating and angsty for all of us, what a great point tonight. That's a great point.
Well, do you know what?
We need the point. The point.
This is what I was going to finish off on. This is what I was going to finish off on, Rob, and I'll come to you for the final word for it, Rob.
Well, can I just finish what I was saying there?
Yes, go on.
Just what Robert said there, which I completely say what he was saying is quite true there. But what we would disagree with on Robert saying that or maybe you're referring to times gone by about Moyes being a pragmatic manager. I don't think he is anymore. I don't think that's there anymore because I think if it was, he would have done something much more, in inverted commas, revolutionary that he's never done it's not in his vocabulary. He doesn't do that. And you take that decision there. You're looking at players. You talk about just going back to recruitment there before I start going on and rant about something else with them. But you've gone and bought a near £40 million kid there who's meant to be the next best thing.
Yeah.
Yet what you're doing as well in man management. How's he going to feel there when you've got Dwight McNeil coming on for our best player who comes off, and you've got somebody there? That moment there. What was it when he goes off here? I've got it on my list. 60. He's got half an hour, that kid. And if you turn to him as a manager on that bench and say, "Go on, kid, go and make a star for yourself there."
Oh yeah.
We've gone and paid this money for you. You are. I'll tell you right now. I'm not a professional footballer. None of us are. But I'm telling you right now, if I was told at the age of 18 that I can go on and change a Premier League game with half an hour to go, I'd be skipping on that pitch.
In a game, in a really tight game against in a great environment.
Exactly that.
What a moment to put Dibbling into that game. I just don't get it. I don't. You're
going up against a team probably haven't got a fucking clue about you. You probably their manager's as good as he's been for them. Probably has done research on Dibbling because, lo and behold, ironically, he probably thinks he's not going to get on, which is what came to pass. So you're doing that. You're putting McNeil on there. That is Moyes from the past. And the thing that I thought we've avoided since getting them back was taking the Moyes that ran out of modern day football. He just was beyond all of that. It's the things that the narrative that came that started to come out when we got him back. Oh, he's a dinosaur. Dicey's a dinosaur. Mourinho, they're dinosaurs because football's gone completely different than it was 20 years ago. David Moyes proved that wrong, but that period's gone now. Yeah. And he needs to face facts here that what he's doing right now is ultimately going to get him the sack, and it's going to get us into a concerning position in the Premier League when you're looking back several weeks where we're all really excited. Look, it may sound to the fans like we're being really fickle here, because say if we go and beat Fulham with a comfortable performance, then yes, many fans will be like, it was just a poor run of form. We'll be okay now. International break, we'll reset, we'll come back, and we'll go back into a run of form. I don't have any real confidence in that happening because the manager himself is not for changing. And until he does that, which he won't, then Everton are going to be limited and then will have already hit the ceiling. And that would be, sadly, when he kept us comfortably in the Premier League. Is that the furthest David Moyes gets his probably final tenure at Everton? Well, it indicates what we've seen, that yes, keeping us in the Premier League comfortably is the best he could possibly do. Is that where Everton need to be right now? It might well be, given the position we're heading into. Yeah. But he's not going to be the person that carries on to do it. Because if Everton are in that position, I think we've got new owners in there who really don't sort of fuck about. Look what they've done with Roma. If they see a point where they think, you know what, fans are starting to turn here, the club look like they're within X amount of points of a relegation battle, they'll change it. They will make that change there. So the other thing I point to Moyes, if I was his mate or if I was Alan Irvine sitting next to him, is, you know what, you can't fuck about here like we did when you were the Everton manager, and Bill Kenwright was never going to sack you in a million years. That's not the way it works these days. Mm-hmm. And that's where he needs to get a grip of everything. Will he? I'm not thinking he will. Do I want David Moyes sacked? Now that's a completely different discussion, which we may save until later on, or maybe if we get beat against Fulham. Concerned? Yes. Do I want him sacked? No, because I think it's
not crisis point, is it?
It's hard to explain why I don't want him sacked without it feeling like I'm really.
We're not in a point. We're not in a point where we're like what Wolves have been or what Forest have been.
No, you're right there.
Well, crisis clubs, you know, and
it's
a long season because look, I want to wrap it up, lads, because I'll be brutally honest, I'm absolutely knackered and I want to go to bed.
But just before that one,
no, because you'd always do this whenever I host. You cut me off, so you're not going to cut me off. You're going to listen to me. What I was going to say is, I think that we were 6 games ago, we were talking about potentially maybe being the surprise team to hit Europe. I don't think in the space of a couple of games we're all of a sudden going to be relegated. I think we're probably in the middle of that feeling. And I think we will end up being mid-table. I don't think that tonight... Well, what I was going to finish off by saying, and I think, Rob, you mentioned it just then.
As it is, you think we'll be mid-table?
It's cut me off again. What I was going to say,
as it is, do you think we'll be?
No, we'll be lower half mid-table, I think. But what I was going to say is, I think after Sunderland's result against Chelsea last week and our defeat against Spurs, I think we all looked to this game and thought it's going to be a toughie. They've started really well. We're not playing brilliant. I think ultimately it'll represent a good point. I'm not saying that I'm happy with that. I still wanted us to. I know you're shaking your head, but I think in the context of how things are at the minute, with the way we're playing and the way they're playing, it's not a bad point. It could have been better. It should have been better. We should be aiming to beat promoted sides, but I think they have performed really well lately. So, look, I am going to leave it there because I know Dave's desperate to talk about it. But Dave, you can talk about it all tomorrow on Toffee Tuesday, which is back with Dave.
I'm going to talk to my wall in a minute about this. Honestly,
I know I'm only a part timer. That's why I ramble.
I've got my pad out from university.
Well, save it all because everyone will be dying to listen to it on Toffee Tuesday tomorrow. So Dave will be back with Les for Toffee Tuesday. A little bit of a change around in the schedule with the match being Monday night. The lads will be back with Byline, and I'll be back later on in the week with a weekly looking forward and looking ahead to the Fulham game. But my thanks to Dave and to Rob for coming on to post-match reaction tonight. It did finish. Sunderland 1, Everton 1, and we'll speak to you soon on the Blue Room. Up the Toffees. Take care.